This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, MICHAEL COVEL. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. On a lark, January 2012, this podcast started, my Trend Following podcast. Now in 2018, 700 episodes. This episode right now that you're listening to is episode number 700. And to kind of keep my chain of loyalty in place, today on episode 700, for the first time in a long time, a new episode, the trader, Tom Basso. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with Tom, you can easily find him featured across Jack Schwager's Market Wizards series, some of the best-selling Wall Street books ever. You can also find Tom across my podcast, especially my first mega episode, number 400, which is literally 4 hours of prior Tom episodes on this podcast. So as I was thinking about who I should have on for episode 700, I needed to reach back and give props to somebody who helped me to lay the foundation for this podcast popularity. And Tom has helped me tremendously with his appearances. I'm not going to give away anything right now about where Tom and I will go in our conversation, but I want to give one little PSA for Tom out of the gate. Now, Tom is a retired trader, but in this weird connected social media world, he's kind of not retired now because he's continued to connect with people over the years. And now, for the first time since he had his fund, he has launched a new website to specifically interact with people like you and me. And we should all be so fortunate for Tom's efforts. Without further delay, let me jump into episode 700 with Tom Basso. And that would be 700 plus 400 equals 1100. Yeah, I know, we can all kind of do the math. But, you know, Tom was episode 400. Now he's episode 700. Maybe we should bring Tom on for episode 1000. Again, without me continuing to go down some kind of odd tangent, please enjoy my conversation with Tom Basso. As we think about technology, you kind of have told me, gosh, $1 million of your own capital to produce quantified computerized trading systems back in the day, that's come down to, roughly a couple $1,000s now. And that brings us to what's the most important thing. And I think this is where my audience can really take away from you is it's the individual, it's the person. And what is it about the individual and the person that's so important? And I think where you can really help us and remind us and teach us starts with belief. We have to have a belief about how things work. Why don't you speak to me about your thoughts on belief and perhaps how some of your most important beliefs have come to be?
Well, I would say beliefs feed their way into the trading world and even into your living world on the basis of what you believe in becomes sort of your reality. If you believe that the markets are, rigged or something, you will find all sorts of excuses to think they're rigged. If you think they're just a bunch where buy and sellers come together and price moves around, then you'll just create some trend following models and follow the prices and not worry about it. I think in life, if I'm golfing out there and I truly believe that I will not hit this next shot well, I won't hit the next shot well. I think that's where I come from. And when I'm looking at trading strategies and trying to drive down the costs of what I'm doing every day, my belief is that technology is going to keep marching on, and pretty soon it's going to be $200. It's just going to get cheaper and cheaper and faster, and hard drives get bigger, and Everything's in the cloud. You got servers doing everything. It's an amazing world we live in, and I just am fascinated by just trying to absorb it all. It's a lot of fun.
Well, technology, as you describe, with the price coming down and down and down, I have a mental image right now of walking into a Home Depot and I can see, okay, I can buy a hammer, right? But if I buy that hammer doesn't, when I put it in my hand, it does not build me a house. I have to have an understanding, I have to have a belief of what to do with the hammer to get the value from it.
And that's absolutely true. And, a lot of the studies I did back in the day give me, it's more of a scientific approach of let's try a thesis out, run a bunch of data, try to simulate it different ways and figure out what did I learn from this. And then that becomes one more notch in an extensive, trading strategy that encompasses everything from buy sell engines to position management to total portfolio management, diversification, portfolio selection, mental side of trading, and trying to get all of that to come together to sort of win the day in the end. I think the same way as an Olympic athlete is trying to look at every part of nutrition and exercise and mental training and everything to try to become the best they can be. I think if you take the belief that you can be better than you are today, then you will be better. You'll act on exercise, diet. I know you're a big fan of yoga and a lot of athletic activity, and you keep yourself in good shape. You can stand on top of your head. I can't. I think that's the types of things that people in the trading world sometimes lose sight of. They're so hung up over the quote system, the numbers, just the buy and sell type engine, that they lose sight of all these other esoteric things that surround that buy sell engine to make it a really good trading strategy.
When I listen to you talk, I think, my gosh, this man has figured out a system not only for the trading, but you seem to have a system of self-awareness too. So you seem to be very good at looking at yourself in the mirror and not letting the mirror lie to you. I'm not asking you to be cocky about this because none of us are perfect, but how have you developed that personal self-awareness system to where there's no excuses, it's all on you, and when you see Tom in the mirror, you're honest with who you see?
That's a great question. I started, it was in senior year of high school. I can remember it vividly. I had to do a book report. I was a shy guy, just completely destroyed. I had no confidence to get up in front of a class of just 20 people, many of whom were close friends, and give a little stupid book report. And I had heard that some people practice speeches and so on in front of a mirror. So I close the door to the bathroom. I get in front of the mirror. I start giving a speech. I try to start making myself look better. And it worked. It kind of helped me through getting that speech done, and I survived it. And I started realizing right after that, for the next year or so, that every time I'd get done with a day, I'd sort of lie down to sleep and sort of replay the tape of what my day looked like and how did I react to different situations, different people, different things, challenges that I faced. Did I do a good job or could I have done better? And it sort of became a little bit of an observer self. But later on, as I got out into engineering, I was trying to increase my awareness, and I read some stories about observer selves where sort of, if you want to think about it, one part of your brain is doing whatever it is that you're doing that day, doing accounting, working on code in your computer or whatever. That's one part of your brain. The other part of your brain can be sitting there sort of watching you do that activity. When I found I could do that, I started out doing it by literally putting a little sticky note on my computer. And every time it would say like a word of mindfulness. And every time I saw that little sticky tape, I would then stop what I was doing, make sure my observer self could play back what I had just gotten through. How did I Was I don't know, running fast? Was I too slow? Was I not pushing myself enough? Was I allowing myself to become distracted? Just all sorts of different things. And then I go back to work. And then I'd see the sticky note and I'd go back into observer self. Little by little, it's sort of an exercise. And just like most exercises and habits, you build a habit of doing it more and more. And pretty soon the observer self is there all the time. No more sticky notes. Then I guess that reached a point where I just feel like I'm aware of what I'm doing all the time, 24 hours a day. I think the only time I don't realize what's going on is when I'm kind of by choice emotionally involved in a movie or emotionally involved in some activity where I choose to go away from the rational, logical self that I might be more inclined to be when I trade into an emotional self where I'm enjoying myself. I'm having a good laugh. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm watching a horror flick or a sci-fi flick, and I'm trying to enjoy it. I think that's kind of the progression, all the way from mirror work to sticky notes to having an observer self all the time, and then more into mindfulness.
You describe balance by those two different poles in your life, the rational side, the emotional side. You've now been on social media for many, many years, and I know you not really paid for it, but you've been a big teacher to a lot of people, and a lot of people like to listen to you and observe you. But you must also, just by your natural observation of yourself, of just looking at everyone else, you observe other people. How do you observe balance today when you watch social media? How do you perceive people? Do you perceive a certain part of the population that gets it, a certain part that's striving, a certain part that doesn't get it? I'm kind of describing how I see things. But how do you observe so many people on this new platform of connecting with strangers that you've been involved in, my gosh, the last 5, 6, 7 years?
Well, it's been fascinating to me that here I've been retired from the industry for about 15 years now, and I still get 4 or 5 emails a day from all around the world. I get messages on Facebook. I've got all sorts of Facebook friends. I got 8,000 plus Twitter followers. I haven't managed any money in 15 years, except for my own. But I've been very helpful to everybody who asks a question. I think I find it interesting that in terms of social media, so many people are getting so emotional, especially when they're not even friends. I mean, I'm true friends. I mean, you and I have known each other for some time, so we have a background together. However, some new follower that just came in yesterday or something, I had no idea who the person is. And yet sometimes I'll get critical comments on something I say. You know, they're expressing their own opinion, which is fine with me. I think everybody should be able to express opinions, and no matter how insane they seem to be. But what I find happening more in social media is this sort of emotional response to the way that that person believes the world works or believes the way the government works or whatever. They're just 100% committed. They're very close-minded many times to what other possibilities might be with that situation, and it's kind of created this real divisive nature of everything from nutrition, exercise, politics, just any topic you pick it, and you've got people that I just pulled out an air fryer that I had. It's a little device that you can fry without putting stuff in oil. And so I wanted to try it with a little thing. I signed up for an air fryer webpage on Facebook. And I see all these people that are talking down air fryers, and there's other people that just can't love them enough. It's just like, what? It's the same device. How can people be so that far apart? They just get entrenched, and they just, oh man, it's just unbelievable. That's kind of the sad part of social media, is this divisiveness that it seems to bring forth. But if people would just open their minds and have discussions and talk through some things, thought-provoking questions. Just really analyze more the philosophy of the question and look at both sides. Maybe try to argue both sides just to see how you could do it.
It also seems, though, too, that perhaps people have a hard time ultimately saying, my gosh, this particular side really is to a high degree of probability true. I can accept it, I can use it, I can move on. It seems like a lot of people are kind of in this gray area, unable, perhaps because of the fog haze of the consternation of all these people agreeing or disagreeing. And it seems like it's harder and harder for people to make sound decisions. I think personally, and you've got a few years on me, but not too many, I think we're a little bit lucky in the sense that we started before the internet. And so I still have a very conscious thought process of like interaction with people, real interaction with people. Whereas I think a lot of younger people today, this is it. I mean, this faceless, perhaps a real person, perhaps not a real person, this is their life. And I don't know if they have the same grounding that Tom might have.
You're absolutely right. Both of my kids, literally, if I don't message them on the phone, I'm not going to get a response. If I call them, it goes to voicemail. If I send an email, they won't even read it for days. But on social media, if I message them on Facebook or if I message them using a text on the phone, I sometimes get a response by text typed in all within 60 seconds. Unbelievable. They don't talk to people. I mean, they just stay in their phone and go, their fingers. I've watched my great niece, who's about 20 years old now, I believe, at ASU, on her phone, complete with nails, go at 3 times the speed I can go, and she doesn't miss a letter. It's unbelievable.
Let me take you back, though, to something that we were chatting about, the self-awareness. I would love for you to map out a time. Perhaps I can get you to jog your memory that you'd be willing to share the most significant time. And, in the professional poker world, I've had Andy Duke on this podcast many times, professional poker player. In professional poker, they have something called tilt, where basically the player gets into kind of an emotional state and a negative emotional state and kind of loses track of their system and just makes bad decisions. Is there any moment that you can really recall? I mean, I'm sure you can. It's a matter of whether I can get you to share it. But perhaps the Tom's biggest instance of going on tilt, where you really had to look in the mirror and say, man, I know everything I'm doing right now, this is not right. I need to kind of reassess. I need to stop. I need the stop loss on me right now. I need to change.
I remember a very specific example of that. I was leaving from St. Louis, where we originally had our business, and I was doing a business trip to Phoenix, Arizona, where I now live. It was an afternoon flight, TWA out of St. Louis, and I remember living out in the woods southwest of St. Louis. Went home, and back in those days, I drank caffeine. So I'm knocking down a couple of cups of fresh coffee, black, finishing off my packing, making sure my briefcase is ready, and I jump in the car. I head out Highway 44 into the city. I then am on 270 heading to the airport. I come over the top of a sort of a hill and went up the hill and then came over and started going down the hill. And I found myself just looking at all the cars around me, and I'm looking for any potential speed traps that might be out there. I realized my fingers were practically white. I was gripping the steering wheel so heavily. I realized that I was going probably 15 or 20 miles over the speed limit. I realized that all that caffeine had me so jacked up, and I was going to have an hour and a half to kill at the airport before my plane would take off. And this is before TSA and all those things. I had put myself in a stressful state for no reason whatsoever. And I realized that the caffeine was clouding my judgment and my awareness of what was happening to me. That same trip onto Phoenix, I actually stopped drinking coffee and been decaffeinated since my 20s now. And occasionally I might have an iced tea or something, but basically I'm decaffeinated. That was a real critical awareness thing, because I realized that I was missing that awareness because basically I have a chemical in my body that's causing me to speed up, causing my heart to jump a little bit every now and again. And it was a profound day. I mean, by the time I got back off that trip, I was living in this peaceful world that wouldn't go away. And I've been living in it ever since.
To dive into that peaceful world, your background as an engineer, trader, fund manager, I would love for you to kind of help me to understand your routine. You've got routines, you've had early routines and early in life, fund manager routines. You've got certain routines now. Obviously, there's been an evolution of routine. Maybe not. Maybe you've been very, very consistent on certain routines. What are those certain routines? I mean, you just gave one routine, which is the elimination of coffee. But what are the routines that have worked very, very well for you for decades?
A trader has to view himself as an athlete. You can't just expect to go out drinking with the boys till midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning and get a short nap in, and then all of a sudden do a full day of stressful environment, which trading certainly could be if you let it be, and or even running Trendstat. I've got 10 employees. Everybody's got questions. They want to know the answer to this and the answer to that, or what we should do here and there. And my decisions are going to lead to projects being done more timely, more successful, or it could be the opposite if I screw it up. So there's the pressure to perform is always there. I believe that trying to be as athletically inclined, clear your head out, make sure you keep your body fit, and it helps your mind to be sharp as well. So that's one routine that I've continued all my life. I always stayed at hotels on the road that had fitness facilities. It was just routine, and I think that's something. Sleep is extremely important, and I've been blessed. I admit, I guess, from early childhood. I'm 6'3" in terms of my height, and as my brother, who's 6'5", and myself were growing like weeds, I think it took a lot out of our bodies, and it really taught us to rest the body and allow the body to recover because we were just growing so fast. I think that spilled over into then basketball in college, which if you're playing a fast break basketball game, you get done with that and the adrenaline wears off and you're pretty much knocked out. You really don't need a lullaby. You're going to sleep really well there. Then I got out into the real world, and here I was doing chemical engineering, starting up a money management business, trying to get an MBA, designing a custom home, taking courses in landscaping and all sorts of things. I didn't have any time to sleep. But what I did have time to sleep, I pretty much got my 7, 8 hours in, and I was dead to the world. That continued on until we then started up the business. I left chemical engineering. Now I'm traveling the world. I'm jet lagged every now and again, and I still get really good night's sleep. I guess I've been blessed all my life with various conditions that have allowed me to try to have a good 8 hours. I've been sometimes as long as 9 hours I'll sleep, and I still do. And I think your brain needs to take those dead brain cells out of there and replace them with some new ones. I've read a book on neurogenesis, which is the generation of brain cells. A very interesting book. They talk about how your brain sort of flushes that old stuff out and brings in the new stuff, deep sleep. And that's pretty much when it happens.
I've got some great statements here. If I was just to describe them, I would say they're very zen. And I would love to kind of play a little bit of not word association, but almost sentence association with you and let you kind of express your feeling. Here's the first one. It's okay to lose, isn't it?
Yes, I think that losing is especially insightful. Sometimes winning a golf tournament, for instance, you really don't know how much better you could have played. But losing, you can go back and remember those two putts that you missed, and maybe that one shot that went a little askew. I think losing is very educational. And in addition, I'm always fond of remembering a statement that one famous trader, in fact, it might have been Ed Sequoia, I can't remember. He said, trading in an effort to win every time is equivalent to trying to breathe by only breathing in. Breathing out is part of the equation to breathing in, and losing on some trades so that you can win on others is also part of the process. I thought that was brilliant.
If we were to take that back to the social media observations, even if someone reads that sentence, what you just described, it's kind of hard to internalize, isn't it? If you don't have the experience or you don't have the mentor that can really rigorously bring you into that understanding, that sentence, the depth of it, what you just laid out, can escape people, escape their understanding of it.
Absolutely. And in a very top level, cursory look at losing, say in trading, for instance, which is a logical thing to talk about here. The new trader will tend to blame himself for that. I did something wrong. I'm not good enough. Winning a trade is pat yourself on the back, and losing means kicking yourself down and making yourself less comfortable with yourself, less confident. And in reality, I think the experienced trader, certainly I've gotten there, views the next trade as about the same as his next breath. It's just really not anything. It's just what you do every day. It's the next trade of the next 1,000 trades, and you're building this huge database of trades, and you know that 35% or something are going to be profitable, and 65 are going to be unprofitable, and the average gainer is going to be this much, and the average loser is going to be that much, and you're just one trade is just such an immaterial part of that database that you just don't even think about it any more than you'd think about, oh, I think I should breathe now. You just do it. I think that's where the difference between the new trader and the experienced trader is that you start stepping back from the emotional nature of each trade and blaming yourself or praising yourself on the good side.
I caught a tweet recently and it was critical of some of my work, and it kind of said, well, gosh, if this guy knew what he was doing, why is he writing books and whatever? And he kind of ended it by saying, this trend following stuff, this momentum is all, chicken bones and tea leaves. And I thought to myself, I'm kind of the younger guy here who has done some of his career channeling these people that have come long before me. And it's like, okay, let's take Mike Coveil out of the equation. Well, that must mean that Tom Basso is into, tea leaves and chicken bones too, huh? And all these other people. It always strikes me.
Richard Duncan back in the day, he's a range breakout trader from before I even came on the industry. What he did back then still would work today, I believe.
There's a simplicity in that, though, that is very, very difficult for people to accept. Let me stay with the association sentences for a moment. One that I really love, I think it means a lot to you, the separation of self-worth from net worth.
Yes, a very good one. It gets close to what we were just talking about, where net worth is just the dollar signs behind your name, what you're worth. And, money does buy certain possibilities and alternatives. It allows you to live in Vietnam if you choose to, or move to the States for the next several months if you feel like doing that. You can't do that for free. It costs some money. So net worth is useful, but your self-worth, who you are as a person, how you are able to help your family or your friends or your country, that's a whole different animal. It has really very little to do with each other. You really have to separate that out and say, like, net worth is interesting and I like working on that. And sure, I'm not complaining about, having an above average net worth these days, but I don't view that as having anything to do with my self-worth. I'm more likely to think of my self-worth in terms of helping this golfer I ran into the other day with some help on his putting. And he came back, and I saw him last night at a get-together at his house, and he just was effusive over how much I helped him and how much it's made a difference in his game. And I just felt very satisfied that I was able to reach out and help somebody like that. And that's more in the area of self-worth, I believe.
It's an interesting area to dive into. You and I both, and perhaps you to a much larger degree than myself, we both know people that have made immense fortunes, perhaps billions of dollars. We also know people that just have not made much money. But I can also think of that range of possibility. And I actually know people that have perhaps more self worth with a net worth less than $100,000, more self worth than perhaps some of the guys that I've met over the years that have hundreds of millions of dollars. That's very, very hard for people to accept that that might be true.
It's absolutely true. I know people that same way. And I think sometimes when the $100 million comes to the absence of any other helpful activities that are helping society or helping others or helping your family, a lot of these people are so driven just to try to get net worth, and they aren't thinking through self-worth, that they end up cheating themselves and all those around them, because they're not doing anything to kind of help their world around them. They're just simply chasing a buck, and they're very shallow people. Many times they have to try to kind of placate their lack of self-worth or self-confidence by buying all sorts of fancy and expensive toys, 7 homes, etc. And their lives are miserable because they never can even visit the 7 homes they own. They can't drive the 20 cars that they own. It's just a total waste of time and money, and they would have been better off and probably appreciate their lives more had they taken some of those same dollars and send them to a charity, or maybe start a foundation that awards scholarships to kids trying to getting an engineering degree or anything like that. I mean, there's lots of things you can do with some of your extra money. At some point, one of my clients way back when had just sold a microwave network for $29 million. He was just a gentleman. And I was a young kid, and I said, "Boy, I guess you're set for life." And he said, "Son, the first $1 million you make buys you your Cadillac and your home and gives you all the money you need to live the rest of your life. Everything after that's just the score of the game you're playing." I thought that was very sensibly put, because he sold this microwave network off, and he now is going to do what? He's going to maybe start fooling around with another one. And he's not doing it because he's obsessed with dollars. He's doing it because he's intrigued by the puzzle of getting these things to connect to each other, and to him it's just a brain tease. And that keeps him very grounded. And he was a great family man. His wife was sitting there with him. You could tell they loved each other. He was living on a ranch on top of a hill in California. It was really beautiful. And he gets to tell he just relaxes and enjoys life. And it doesn't make any difference whether he's worth 29 or 1 or 100. I absolutely believe he'd be the same comfortable, confident gentleman.
When you look at it, you say, gosh, if I can be lucky enough to get to the age 100, health permitting and all that kind of fun stuff, you want that attitude. You want to be able to talk to somebody. I think about this. I want to be able to talk to someone perhaps over the phone when I'm 100 years of age, and they don't know how old I am. And I think you're one of those guys that's going to be able to pull that off. And I think you know what I'm talking about. It's the attitude, right? How do you stay young in your energy? I mean, how does Tom stay young in your energy? Because you are young in your energy.
It's giving myself challenges all the time. I mean, I keep coming back to golf because I just played in the senior club championship. So I'm 66, and I'm probably one of the more fit 66 in my age group, because I work out so much and I keep working on my swing. Well, I tied for the lead after the second day, and we ended up having to go to a sudden death playoff. Sudden death playoff, I lost 4 shots for him, 5 shots for me, and one of my putts just went off the edge of the cup. And that type of thing sets a goal for next year, that I'm going to win by 3 or 4 or 5 shots. Next year, I will attempt to make it not even close. And it gives me something to shoot for, and it builds the energy, and I attack it different ways by saying, okay, let's examine my putting, let's examine my full swing. What can I do to shore this up? My mental side, is there anything I can do to get my mental side more steady state while I'm out on the course? those are the types of things that make you young. Trading the same way. I'm still doing research on trading. I'm still helping other people that email me or send me messages on Facebook, and they're all around the world. I mean, there have been some that I've had to translate from Japanese and Chinese into English so that I can then write the answer and retranslate it back into Chinese or Mandarin or Japanese so that but all of a sudden I'm communicating with someone, reasonably. We're getting an understanding of what each other's saying, and I'm hopefully helping. And there's so much satisfaction in that, and it makes you want to get up each morning and say, I wonder what new brilliant things are going to happen today.
Let me keep you in golf for a second. I'm not a golfer, but I do like to occasionally observe the majors. Did see the last 9 holes of the PGA Championship. What would be your observation of the mental constitution of one Brooks Koepka to pull that out with Tiger chasing him? That was pretty amazing, wasn't it?
It was, and but here's a guy that morning reportedly was bench pressing 210 pounds the morning of the last day of that tournament that you watched. Now, I don't know about your strength, but I'm not going to be bench pressing 210 on my best day ever. But when you have that kind of strength, and you know that you've got that kind of strength, and you know that you can hit that ball, 320, 340, just on command, and you know you're feeling strong, you're feeling like you're ahead in the lead, you're looking over at Tiger Woods and saying, he was good once, but he doesn't bench press 210 pounds. I've got everything in place that I need to do to win this thing, and I'm just going to go do it. Just kind of ignore the guy trying to make the comeback from, who may be a bit past his prime. Certainly his back is past its prime. I mean, Tiger's strong. He works out a lot. I'm just not sure that the way he is working out, or even Brooks Koepka's for that matter, are conducive to better golf. It does make you strong, though, mentally, because somebody that puts their body through that and realizes they can do it, I think they've shored up their mental a bit too, because it does take a mental side to train at that level and to keep it up and to be disciplined about it and to push yourself. And certainly Brooks has done that. Tiger's done it too. I mean, I'm amazed Tiger's even playing golf after all the surgery he's had on his back. And yet he's playing it at a top 50 golfer in the world level. Good for him.
Let me add something to the Brooks thing. I remember back at age 19, I remember what was the measurement for the NFL draft combine. And what they would do is they would see how many times you could bench press 225 pounds. Now, at one weird point in my life when I was lifting a lot of weights, I did that 12 times once. When I read about Brooks Koepka, he actually did it 14 times at his age the morning before, 225 pounds, 14 times before the final round of a major. Everyone's got their own way of getting to a mental strength, but that really truly is, I'm sure that's never happened before in golf.
I'd be very surprised. That's a lot of weight. I mean, that's more than I weigh. That's lifting Tom Basso over your head or, up off your bench. It is an amazing amount of weight. It's not surprisingly, that shaft that he swings is bending like crazy as he's coming into the ball, and it's just pounding the ball out there. I think there's just a lot of mental side there that goes into training at any level, and I think that bleeds into mental strengthness when you face adversity on the course. You draw upon that inner strength and say, no, I got this. I'm strong. I can hit this next shot well. Let's do it. Let it go.
I've got one more kind of association for you. Life is the dancer and you are the dance.
That's interesting. That's kind of saying that life is sort of the lead and sort of imposing kind of the whims that life throws at you. And then you have to dance with that in mind. I think that's kind of what I would associate with that. In other words, another one that's just like that. You can't change the direction of the wind, but you can change your sails.
Trend following 101.
Yeah, exactly. Because trend following 101, that's what it is. So you can't change the market wants to go down 50% from here. It's going to do it. All you can do is react to it and position yourself appropriately. Change the sales.
Well, I think that's one of the things that's hard for people to understand about trend following. You just mentioned the market could go down 50% from here. That doesn't mean that you wake up tomorrow and you start taking an action based on your belief that the market will go down 50%. But you are prepared for whatever.
Yeah, I'm prepared. It might go up 100% starting tomorrow from over the next year. It might go down 50. I'm prepared for both. I don't really, I mean, obviously, I think I'd probably do better financially if it went up, I would have to say. I'm fully prepared to put on the hedges and to batten down the hatches and to sell out of a few stocks and to deal with futures trading. And all of those things I have systems and strategies in place to deal with what would happen no matter which way it goes. If you've done a good job of strategizing what you're going to do with your investment strategy, then I believe you should have looked at up markets, down markets, and sideways markets and know what's going to happen with all of them and be prepared to do it.
Know what's going to happen with your action, your decision making based on what the market does.
Correct. If I'm a trend follower, for instance, and I'm trading gold, and gold starts moving upward, it's going to sooner or later kick off some indicators that say the trend is now up. So you buy it and you put a stop behind it, and then you allow it to keep going and you follow the trend. And when it starts running out of gas and turning around and changing the direction to down, you go ahead and you take your profits, hopefully. Or if you don't have a profit, you take a loss and you're out and going the other way maybe. You're not anticipating anything. You're just reacting to what the market's doing.
I think what you just said is very prescient for this interview, because I don't necessarily have questions when I get you on the phone. I just feel you, and then I put it out there. And what I love is that you just react. That's a whole other lesson that people can take from life, is like whatever's thrown at you, ponder, think, respond, give a good reaction. And I think that in itself is a great lesson that you're giving for people. It's just, how does one manage a conversation? How does one manage interactions with people? And I think you're exceptional at that.
Perhaps, I guess part of that ability is, of course, living a life of everywhere around the world, as you and I both have done, and dealing with the markets across a wide range of markets over a wide range of years, up markets, down markets, sideways markets, dealing with answering 3 to 5 emails a day or messages a day from various traders asking questions. It's sort of like, you get to the point where I sort of know the material so well. I know how my life has done what it's done. I've been very introspective about how I've had to deal with life in general, and nutrition and exercise and family issues and whatever. And I think that allows me, at my more advanced age than you, to be able to hear a question. Chances are I've already thought about that, or I've been asked about it before, or you know what I mean? It's kind of like I'm speaking from a vast quantity of experience, that when you give me an association question, it's pretty easy for me to think through my life real briefly and come up with an answer right off the top of my head, because I kind of know the topic.
I remember asking Leo Melamed of the Merck CME back in the day. I remember asking him on this show a question. His first response is, "How did you know to ask me that question?" I was like, "Well, I read your book." Yeah, that's the fun part of doing an interview, is you want to try and find, if you can, you want to find places where a guy like you, Tom, I can try and take you to a place that or an angle or a perspective that you might not yet have ventured to. And that's the challenge of doing an interview.
Right, and you are always well prepared for these interviews compared to other interviews that I've had in my past. But yeah, I think when you ask a question that gets into the self, gets into my mind, and how did I deal with those issues, I think those are the most fascinating thing to a lot of people, because I think they're going to face those same issues a lot of times in their life, and maybe they aren't even aware that they've got those issues. And maybe we get them start thinking about, well, how am I dealing with stress in the markets? My view of stress would be is that there's potential stressors out there. And if you allow those stressors to become, if you accept them into your life and you allow them to change you, then they become stress. But to me, stress is you allowing stress to happen. I could think of maybe a guy that diffuses bombs under, he's down to 10 minutes and he's got to find the right wire to cut. That's a lot of potential stress. But if you could somehow magically just be cool and collected and trace the wires and figure out which one to cut, the bomb's defused and you're safe. I think that's kind of where a lot of these mental things come in. I think some people, including getting back to the social media that you talked about, are so into a very shallow level thinking about the way their life is, and they don't look introspectively into how they're affecting other people around them or how they're even affecting themselves over the long run, and creating extra stress for themselves that's unnecessary, creating a lot of illusions around themselves that their life is not very real, and I think that's sad that we've come to that. And I'm with you. I love to sit down and just talk to somebody. It's very refreshing.
Well, it's like, how does one find meaning? I mean, for example, I'm sure guys do different things, but I have noticed in the last 5 years that women of all ages, 20s, 30s, 40s, really use social media as a way to give an image off of themselves. Often, in many cases, the beauty side of it, the sexy side of it. I think there must be a competition, not only perhaps for the attention of perhaps males, but I see that competition between women where social media is driving this desire to look a certain way, and so much of it is not real. So I really wonder. I mean, I have a 13-year-old niece. I really wonder about how does one find meaning as a young person when they're being bombarded with so much stuff that a lot of it is inconsequential. And then here's where it gets really hairy. I don't know if you're aware of this. The youngest Kardashian, 21 years of age, is about to become the youngest self-made billionaire in America, about to beat out Zuckerberg because she started a cosmetics line. So here you and I can lament some of the negatives of social media, but then the young people can say, but what about the youngest Kardashian? She's made $1 billion off her cosmetics empire, and it's all based on Instagram photos. It's a really interesting conundrum, isn't it?
It is. I'm all for people being entrepreneurial and doing whatever they can. If she is using social media as a platform to build sales in her products, and that got her to where she was trying to be with her business, I'm a big fan. If it's one of my family members, a younger woman or of some sort that would be out there just trying to get her next 1,000 friends by not wearing a whole lot of clothes or putting too much makeup on or whatever, then I'd say, well, what's your goal here? What's the end game? So you're going to have 2,000 friends and you're going to have a bunch of guys tracking you. Where does that lead? I mean, what's the logic and what's the end game here? And I think most people don't even think through that long.
To add a note here, though, so just so I don't sound like we're having a female-only version of this conversation, we could say, yeah, we can map it out for guys, too. They're doing the same thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's guys that are, I see new traders starting up and they have fancy themselves, maybe money managers someday, but they don't have enough track record yet to sell, and get registered and all that. And you can see them already trying to pump up. They caught the cryptocurrency at the right time and they did this, and they're kind of trying to build a following and get more friends and show their charts and talk about their successes and all that. And what's the end game of that? It's just, you're not going to get anywhere. Your following is going to be just based on you pumping yourself up. But if you end up getting into the business and you don't have the substance behind it, you're just going to have a hard fall. I don't think people think through strategically even their own lives. I mean, Snapchat, when the chats, the posts, what do they disappear after how many minutes or seconds or whatever? Crazy stuff, forcing you to have to stay connected to what the other person in the conversation is saying right now. You have to drop everything, go to your phone, look at what they say, because if you don't, it's going to disappear. It's unbelievable how that warped your life and makes it very shallow.
I look at these things as, again, kind of like the trading software or the hammer. These are just tools. If we can keep them in our mind as tools, things to perhaps advance our life in a positive way, that's great. But if the tool owns us, we're in trouble.
Right, exactly. I mean, I had a big day today on the computer, so my eyes are a little bit blurred, but fortunately, I don't have to see you to talk to you. But in reality, I did no time on Facebook at all today. I just didn't even have time to get on there.
Let me wind you down to an announcement. I know you have an announcement, something kind of new for you. In retirement, you have decided to put forth an educational platform, I think would be the best way to describe it. You might describe it differently. And it's going to be a new site.
You're absolutely right, Michael. The reason I was working so hard today was to put some final edits into today 9 different videos that I'd shot previously, and I've got another 7 to go tomorrow. That just little tweaks here and there where I want to change an audiovisual presentation of some sort. But if we back up and ask why am I doing all this, basically I would call it sort of a Tom Basso brain dump to a website. I've had 28 years of experience in managing money. I've had about 40 years of experiencing managing my money in various forms. I still, 15 years after retirement, I get 5 questions a day, and a lot of these questions are very, very similar, if not identical, to other questions I've already received. So I sit down and I message them back, and I sit down and I email them back. It just gets to the point where, I'm doing the same thing over and over again. I'm helping a lot of people, and that's satisfying, but it's not very efficient. So we decided, my wife and I were in Malaga, Spain one day, and we were out by the pool, and we were talking through this, having these emails coming in all the time. We got to thinking, if I could create a website that would be open 24/7 every day of the year, and if I could put all the books I would recommend, including Trend Following, your book, which I think is excellent, other books that I've gone ahead and recommended to people, tutoring programs, people that do data, people that do trading platforms and statistics. And then I shot 16 videos, about a half an hour a piece, give or take, that are designed to try to help a trader start from scratch and build a personal trading strategy from scratch, including every bill and whistle that I had in place at Trendstat. So I'm going to go through each one of those, lots of visuals, and make it just absolutely as simple as I can. So I'm basically dumping my brain in all my experience, and I'm trying to put it all in one place that people can come and learn, and they don't need to send me an email necessarily, because probably the answer to your email would be right there. And hopefully we'll see if that's well received and useful for people, and tweak it a little bit over the years. Some products are on there, like the video series is costing us 9 months of heavy effort to put together. So that's going to have a price tag on it. And I've got a narrated version of my 1995 Panic Proof Investing book on there, and that's going to be like $10 or something. But all the rest of the content, all my research papers that I published over the years are there for free. All the recommendations on reading material are free. So there'll be a lot of interesting stuff on the website that people can get some education, and other things on the website that might cost some money but might take you to a different level.
You say that maybe people won't email, but the thing is people want, and I get it a little bit because I can remember starting out, for some reason or another, we have as beginners, the beginning mindset or the new mindset, for some reason or another, the personal touch, the personal interaction, for some people is a real motivating thing. I don't know why that is. I can still remember, you mentioned Ed Secuda. I can still remember meeting him for the first time. And there was something about meeting him for the first time at a beachside cafe, and we weren't in suits or anything like that, t-shirt and shorts, but there was something about his background and his personality and then the way he spoke. And that was very motivating to me as a younger person. You're still going to get people that come to you because they want to touch the hem to get some motivation.
Well, and I can still send an email here and there. I just was trying to say to myself, if I'm answering this question for the, I don't know, 50th time, maybe if I'd go ahead and I'd address this somehow and people could then get the answer, then I'm just covering that many more bases, that many more people. Maybe it goes exponential a little bit. I'm already have enough revenue that have come in that cover my cost of the websites already. It's amazing. It's going to be enjoytheride.world is going to be the URL.
Tom, I appreciate you taking the time today, and you gave a great ending point in the sense, I know I covered it before, but for our next conversation, enjoy the ride. The lengthy explanation for that will be the start of our next conversation.
I look forward to it, Michael.
Take care, Tom.
All right, thanks.
I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.